A really amazing speaker to do our keynote for Unifying Sustainability. He is someone you might recognize from Cowspiracy or What the Health, but he's also an MSU alumni and a former cattle rancher from Great Falls. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you Howard Lyman.
First time I've been given a computer. Thank you. I was going to say to you, you should always listen to what the speaker has to say before you applaud. It's impossible to get it back. 61 years ago, I showed up here at Montana State College. I was here when they changed it to Montana State University. We didn't like it then. We don't like it now. The university was a dancing school, the Slimy Grizzlies. They will always be that. And so I'm a Bobcat. Thank you for coming. I'm going to talk to you tonight about one person's journey. You know, it's always easy for me to say, let me tell you what you ought to do. I have one finger pointed at you, and the rest are back at me. I'm going to tell you about the journey that I was on. The things I thought I knew. The things that I would have sworn up and down that I knew. And many of them were wrong. We need to stop and take some time out and think about what is accepted in the world today. What is it that everybody agrees on that should happen? The thing that's all right. At one time, everyone said, oh, the earth is flat. And then they decided, well, maybe it's not flat. But a lot of folks stuck with the flat model for years and years, and finally, they accepted that it was round. There was a time when people agreed, the majority of the people agreed that slavery was all right. As long as you weren't the slave, it was all right. But we look at it today and we know that that's not true. How many other things are going on in the world today that everybody agrees on that are not right? I want to talk to you about some of the things that I at one time agreed to, and now I do not believe they're right. I'm not going to tell you what you ought to do. I'm going to tell you what a damn fool that I have been, and guarantee I have been for much of my life. I was born during the Second World War. My parents owned the largest dairy farm in the state of Montana. It was almost impossible to hire help. And so my mother and father did most of the cow milking, and I used to get up at dark 30 in the morning with my mother and go down and milk cows, just to keep her company. And I can remember her telling me, be careful, you walk behind those cows too close, you're going to get kicked. I knew better. Guess what? I walked too close behind a cow. She kicked me. I bounced off of the wall, perfectly in range for her again, and she kicked me again. To this day, I can remember thinking, when is this going to stop? And it's the same thing when you don't listen, when you don't think, when you don't analyze. You will walk in the range of the cow, and you may get kicked. But for me, life was great. I loved the farm. I loved getting up in the morning and the dew and the birds singing and the trees, and I thought, this is what I want the rest of my life. I wanted to be a farmer. I went to school. It was like a vacation. I never studied. I never took a book home. I had the greatest time in life. All I ever did in school was party and play football. And I'm telling you what, I was thrilled to death. I had a great time because I knew my parents owned a farm. I was going to go home and run that farm. I was going to be a farmer the rest of my life. I didn't need those books. I didn't need to listen to that stuff. And I'm telling you, I had a party. 12 years of going to school, there's not one of you in here that ever had as much enjoyment going to school as I had. I can still remember when they said to me, they said, Lyman, you're going to graduate. Almost had the big one right there. And then I thought about it and I thought, well, yeah, of course they want to graduate me. If I don't graduate, I'd probably come back. They don't want to do that. I graduated. I went home to that farm. I was going to be a farmer. I found out that farm was a business to be run. I didn't know how to run a business. I'd dumber than a post. I don't let that stop me any. I decided I'd go to Montana State College and I'd learn how to become an agribusinessman. Couldn't spell it, but hell, that's what I wanted to be. I came here, I never met a hormone, a pesticide, an herbicide that I didn't just love. I soaked it up because I was going to be an agribusinessman. And I went home and I turned this one-horse organic dairy into an agribusiness. I can't tell you what a thrill it was for me the first time. I wrote a check for $1 million and it didn't bounce. I thought I was the Donald Trump of agriculture. I knew I was on top of the world until, lo and behold, I ended up paralyzed from the waist down. I went and saw the doctor, and the doctor told me, he said, you have a tumor on your spinal cord. If it's on the inside of the cord, there's less than 1 chance in a million you may ever walk again. Odds of 1 in a million? I'm going to be in a wheelchair the rest of my life. I'm sitting there thinking about it. I'm going to be an invalid the rest of my life. How am I going to deal with that? What am I going to do? All night, that's all I could think about before the operation. And I decided, well, I'll probably be in a wheelchair the rest of my life. And what I'm going to try and do the rest of my life, I'm going to try and do what I think is right. That seems generic enough. And I thought, well, I'm going to go through this operation. I'm going to wake up in the recovery room and I'm going to say to the nurse, how was the operation? And she was going to say, oh, it was fine. Everything went well. It's great. The doctor will be in to see you soon. I would say to the doctor, how did the operation go? He said it went well. I was going to say to him, am I going to walk again? He said, we will know soon. I thought, I can figure that out. Laying in the bed before the operation, I couldn't feel the foot of the bed. I thought, when I wake up from the operation, I'll see whether I can feel the foot of the bed. If I can feel the foot of the bed, I will know there's some feeling there that was not there before. I may not walk again, but I have more feeling then than now. They operated on me. I woke up in the recovery room, and the first thing I remember hearing was the nurse, and she said to me, Mr. Lyman, you have to move up in the bed. I said, there'll never be a day like that. I could feel the foot of the bed. I didn't know whether I would ever walk in bed, but I knew I could feel the foot of the bed, and I couldn't when I went in. The doctor came in, and I said, well, where was the tumor? He said, it was on the inside of the spinal cord. I said, do you still think 1 in a million? He said, well, that's a pretty good bet. I walked out of the hospital. I walked out with a 1 in a million operation. It took a long time to recover, a long time to think, a long time to review what I have been doing in my life. I remembered the reason I wanted to be a farmer was birds and trees and living soil. After all of my agribusiness, I'd seen the birds die, the trees die. I saw the soil change. I was never willing to address any of those issues before. But I thought, if I'm going to be true to my commitment, I need to do things differently. How in the world can I do what I love differently and see birds and trees and soil come back? I thought, I'll become an organic farmer. I went and saw my banker, and I said to my banker, I need to borrow some money. He says, what's new? He said, what do you need it for? I said, I want to become an organic farmer. He looked at me and he laughed. He said, you want me to lend you money? You're not going to spend it with my other customers, a fertilizer dealer, the pesticide dealer, the chemical dealer? He said, there'll never be a day like that. So I sold my farm. I paid my bets. And I started working with other farmers not to do what I had done. The bullshit of getting bigger or get out. Get out. The future of this earth and this planet is not large industrial agriculture. I thought, what we need to do, we need to have somebody in Washington, D.C. that understands farming. So I ran for Congress. I spent a year campaigning, talking to people about the earth, about the future. I lost by 3 percentage points to a multi-term congressman. A lot of people said to me, you have great name recognition. You ought to run again. My wife said to me, you ever decide to run again, you need to find a new wife. My elected political career was over. I got a phone call and they said, how would you like to come to Washington, D.C. and work on Capitol Hill? How would you like to come and lobby for farmers? And I thought, man, that's terrific. We have 535 members of Congress. The problem is they don't know what's happening in agriculture. And if they do, some of the laws they pass, if they did them differently, family farmers could survive. They could see the future. But I went to Washington, D.C. I worked 5 years on Capitol Hill. I was a lobbyist for a smaller farm group. And after 5 years, I said to my friends, I said, this game is rigged. The deck is marked. We're never going to win in Washington, D.C. The most important thing in Washington, D.C. is called get re-elected. That's number one goal. 535 members of Congress, and I said to my friends, I'm leaving. There's no way we can win. They said, what are you going to do? Go talk to the people? I said, yeah. I went out and started traveling, sleeping on people's floors, and talking to them about good common sense. Now, when I was in Washington, D.C., I went to a lot of health clinics where people had come and they'd do their blood pressure and cholesterol and all of it free. And so when I would go, I would get mine done, and my blood pressure was sky high. My cholesterol was over 300. needed to make a change. I thought, maybe what I'll do is I'll try a vegetarian diet. Now, I worked for a farm organization. I was talking about becoming a closet vegetarian. Well, I did it. I lost some weight. My blood pressure went from sky high to normal. My cholesterol from 300 to today it's at 105. I thought, wow, if we can do that, being a vegetarian, just think what I could do if I became vegan. And so here I am, standing in front of you tonight, an almost 30-year vegan. You got to be careful. It may not be healthy. You have to, maybe your cholesterol will get too low. And you have to remember that I've been extremely fortunate for almost 30 years because one way or another I've found enough protein. Well, first turn in the road for me was changing my diet. I will guarantee you that if I had not, I would not be standing in front of you tonight. I would be dead. I went to my 50-year high school class reunion and I walked in the door. I was the only vegan. Half of the class had already died. You never saw so many crutches, walkers, and sick people in your life, and nobody would come up to me and say, tell me about your diet. Till I went to the bathroom. Then some clown would come up and say to me, ever sneak out and get a burger? Well, for me, the first fork in the road was changing my diet. It was my health. I couldn't hardly wait for somebody to just say to me, what are you eating? I had to give them a dialogue of what it was all about. I was the most objectionable son of a bitch you ever met in your life. Because this isn't about what they ought to do, it was about what I did. So, I changed my diet. I'm traveling. I had an opportunity to go to England. And I'm over in England having a wonderful time, and the Minister of Health stands in front of Parliament and he says to the English people, he said, there's no way today we can assure the English people that mad cow disease cannot be transferred from cows to humans. National Cattlemen's Beef Association said it was this exploding powder keg that was heard around the world. I was in England. I was the only person over there from agriculture in England, and I swear up and down, I did interviews on every radio, television station, newspaper you can imagine. I'm telling you, 2 weeks over there, by God, I thought I was famous. I flew back to the United States, and I'm strutting down, and over the loudspeaker I heard, this is prior to cell phones, heard over the loudspeaker, Howard Lyman, pick up a white paging telephone. I did. It was Oprah. Oprah said, I want to have a program about mad cow disease. I have a few million viewers. Would you like to come and appear on that show? Now you have to remember, I was famous. You think I'm going to just jump up and down to go and appear in front of a few million people? Well, of course I am. 3 seconds I agreed. She agreed to send me a ticket. I flew to Chicago. I'm on the Oprah Winfrey Show. I'm looking into that camera. I know there's millions of people out there. And the last thing my wife said to me is ringing through my head. Don't get us sued. I won't, honey. I'll tell the truth. lots of luck. I tell Oprah we're grinding up cows and feeding them to cows. I'm staying on the script. I am just giving the facts. And then Oprah, she said, that just stops me cold. I will never again eat a burger. Nice line. Got us sued for 6 years. A group of Texas cattlemen sued Oprah, Harpo Production, and myself. $180 million. How do you go home and tell your wife, honey, we're getting sued. What? We're getting sued. How much? Well, only $180 million. Oh. We could lose everything we have. Yeah, but we don't have $180 million. Oprah does. Well, we were being sued in Amarillo, Texas. Amarillo, Texas is not the end of the world, but you can clearly see it from there. Oprah and myself, we hired Dr. Phil as a courtroom advisor. Well, we all got together and we sat down and said, well, how are we going to defend this case? Somebody said, well, why don't we just, on the facts, everything was said on the show was true. Let's bring in experts and put them in front of the court. They'll swear up and down what we said was true. And then Dr. Phil says, yeah, and they'll go hire the same kind of experts at Texas A&M, and they'll come in and swear up and down it's not true. We cannot win the case in Amarillo, Texas on the facts. Well, if you're so damn smart, how are we going to defend the case? And he says, I think we ought to defend the case on a person's right to state what they believe. Yeah, we could do that. And he said if we do that, every person on that jury is going to think, if I take this person's right away from him to say what he believes, I'm taking it away from me and what I believe. We were in that courtroom for 6 weeks. There were so damn many lawyers there, you almost had to number them. There were over 1 million documents in the computer file that was available to any lawyer at a moment's notice. We had so many tech people there that it looked like we were part of Microsoft. 6 weeks, the jury came in and found Oprah, Harpo Production, and myself not liable. Wow, we won. They turned around and resued us. We won again. They turned around and resued us again. We won again. 4 times they sued us. 4 times we prevailed for telling the truth. And this wasn't about winning it. This was about showing that the industry was willing to spend the amount of money necessary so that any newspaper or television station that was going to do an issue on eating meat, that it could be very, very expensive. Well, 4 times, we won every time. But you can imagine what it's like for me. I walk into a room like this, and the most time I've seen this many cameras here was the Oprah show, and I got sued. But you know, we should have the right of free speech. We should be able to stand up and talk about the issues that concern us, about issues that we should do or do not do. You know, when I was a little kid, raised around the animals, I loved those animals. They were my friends. I knew that the cow could pick her calf out of a bunch, 200 or 300 calves. That cow could go in and pick out the one that was her. And the courts would even allow that. Whatever brand was on the cow, that person automatically owned the calf that cow claimed. When we would go out and feed the cows hay in the wintertime, most of the cows would come and eat hay, but a few of them would stay with the calves. They would babysit. Those were families. I know in the feedlot that when I would put feed in the bunk, the dominant animal in that pen would pick the spot where it wanted to eat every day. Every animal in that pen knew who was dominant. Everyone knew who was second and third and fourth and on down the line. It's a much more complicated life than what we give them credit for. And you know, I can't tell you how many of those animals I raised. I can't tell you how many of them I sent to slaughter. And when I walked out of the hospital, I knew that was not my future. I wasn't sure what the answer was. I didn't know what the future would entail. But I did not want to see the things I loved die. I will stand in front of you today, almost 30-year vegan, and I will say that the thing that gives me the greatest pride is knowing that no animal has to die for me to live. And so I started down the path of changing because of my health. The next thing that had changed is the way that I treated animals. I can't tell you how many times I've driven down the road and seen a herd of cows, pulled over to the fence and stopped, and went over to the fence and said, "Moo! Moo!" And they would come and visit me. That makes me feel good. That gives meaning to my life. But how about the environment? You know, when I was working on Capitol Hill, year after year, we would bring up the National Organic Standards Act. One group or another would take it on, and they would rally around enough opposition that they would kill it in the House or the Senate or in the committee. Well, it was up again. Wasn't much going on, and we got together and we said, how do we get this damn thing through? You know, most everybody is in agreement that we should have a clean, healthy environment. How do we actually get it through? We got it through the committees. We got it through the Senate. It's coming up in the House. We know that if we make a big push, the other side will flood all of the people out there that they can get to vote against almost anything, and we'll lose again. And so we decided we're not going to do that. We're not going to say a word. All we're going to do is go and talk to members of organized labor. They have all kinds of IOUs from members of Congress that they hate paying because they don't want to go home and have their opponent saying, I'm just a lapdog for organized labor. So we went to organized labor and we said, we don't want you to go and see anybody. We don't want you to send a letter. All we want you to do is the day of the vote, stand at the door and ask for a yes vote. Give a thumbs up to the people that you know. Ask for a yes vote. Nobody is lobbying the bill. Nobody is saying vote no. They agreed to help us. They stood up at the door. People walked in. We asked for a yes vote, and lo and behold, it passed. George Bush said, "There is no way in the world I will ever sign that piece of legislation." We went and saw the Speaker of the House. And we said, is there any way? Is there any way that you could put that little piece of information on some bill the president would have to sign? He said, yeah, we could put it on the defense appropriations bill. I think he'll sign that. We did. He did sign it, but he said, I will not spend a nickel on that. And it wasn't until Clinton came in that we actually organized the National Organic Standards Act. And from that day till today, we have a standard in all 50 states, and it has moved forward. So little things can make a difference. The environment does make a difference. The Environmental Protection Agency is about protecting the environment. It's not about making money for the Koch brothers. It is not about pipelines. It is not about forgetting about the fact when they have ruptured oil lines and contaminate rivers. We got to get our act together. We got to get involved. The future of our children and grandchildren are going to be depending on what you do here and now. We're going to make it through here all right. No problem. We'll make it. Probably our children will make it just fine. But our grandchildren, my wife and I have 5 great-grandchildren. Are they okay? Probably not. Well, what do we do? What in the world do we do? Well, we're back to looking at the things that we think we know. I did a lot of reading, a lot of studying, trying to figure out what I knew that was not so. It concerned me. You know, global greenhouse gases are a problem. The melting of the ice shield is a problem. If the ice shield in Greenland melts, and it is melting at an accelerating rate right now, the ocean levels could rise well over 12 feet. Florida, the mean elevation of Florida is 6 feet. That means the majority of Florida might end up underwater. I guess it's not all bad. But stop and think about it. Where we're sitting today, over 1 billion people, their homes, their homelands are being threatened. We have island nations in the Pacific today that are searching for new places to live because they know the land they live on today is going to be underwater. I happen to be here from the state of Washington. I live in an irrigated valley. The change, the global climate change, we're ending up with more rain, less snow. Less snow is less irrigation water. It's not having the water at the time that we need it. The birds are moving north. The entire environment is living because where they are is the perfect place for them, where they used to be, not where we're going. There's big changes coming. I have a daughter that lives in New York City. Her apartment house on Manhattan is going to be 10, 12 feet of water. Hard to get the elevator to run with 12 feet of water around your building. The East Coast, numerous places are going to be flooded. Is there not something we can do about it? Of course we can. You know, we had the Paris Climate Accords. Every nation on the face of the earth except for 2 signed it. Is it as dramatic as I would like to see it? No. But at least shows that people can work together. Right now in Germany, there is so much solar power available that if you're in the right place at the right time, you can get your energy free. Can you imagine if we take one small country in Africa, there's enough sunshine there to produce enough electricity for the entire needs of the planet. We can do things. Every one of us should do something. You know, the town I live in, we got the city council to ban plastic bags. Plastic put into the environment can last up to 100 years. Why put it there in the first place? We can do something about that. I mean, if we can do that in a little town like Ellensburg, Washington, we ought to be able to do it almost everywhere. We can end up putting solar panels on every one of our schools. We can put solar panels on every public building. We can put solar panels on our own houses. Those are things we can do. So for me, it started out was my health. And then it was the environment. But today, the thing that I'm more worried about than anything is global climate change. My health, one person. The environment, a lot of people, but nothing compared to the amount that will be affected with global climate change. You know, the fact of billions of people being displaced, just wrap your mind around the idea of Bangladesh with the people walking over to India because their homeland will be underwater. What do you do with 1 billion people showing up at your doorstep? These are issues that are not easily solved. These are not issues that we should solve them by basically saying, oh, well, hell, the environment, don't worry about it. And, you know, run another pipeline. You know, vehicles, 50 miles to the gallon, nah, forget about that. That's excessive. No, it's not excessive. The future is electric vehicles. The future is sustainable power. The future is involvement. It's about doing something. We're here today and we're talking about the environment. Well, it's an amazing thing. If we polled everybody in the audience today and we asked them, what is the greatest cause of global greenhouse gases? We'd hear a lot of things. Power plants, cars, trucks, and buses. But do you realize that according to the United Nations, the largest global greenhouse gas is coming from livestock? How many of us know that? How many of us have ever been in a meeting that was an issue, that was something that was debated? Doesn't happen often. And you know why? Gee, you know, if you're going to deal with livestock, you're talking about what I'm eating. That's That's not fair. Somebody shouldn't tell me what I can or cannot eat. All I can tell you is the answer that I made for myself. I don't eat meat. I don't eat dairy. I try to recycle everything that I can. I try to educate people by what I do and not what I say. I no longer go and embarrass my wife by going to a gathering and telling somebody, let me tell you what you ought to eat. I don't do that anymore. I let her do that. She's also, she was a vegetarian before I was. I was a vegan before she was. And she always told me, said, well, a little bit of cheese is not going to bother you. One little bit, get away. We went to a lecture by T. Colin Campbell. One lecture. She comes home and says, I'm now a vegan. Shows you how much sway I have in my household. But do you realize the number of people that are here today can make a significant impact on this area? I can tell you what I think the future is going to be. I think we're going to see the global greenhouse climate change happen at an accelerating rate. I expect to see the Greenland ice shield moving at an unheard of rate by the time I die. When they're running cruise ships across the North Pole, we need to understand that things have changed, and they've changed significantly. It's going to affect this valley. It's going to affect agriculture in Montana. It's going to affect agriculture in the United States, because even what we grow, we may not be able to sell, because people that don't have a house are probably not looking for a place to invest their money in what we are producing. We need to stop. We need to stop and start asking ourselves some questions. What is right? What is wrong? I go back and look at history. The earth was flat. It was wrong. Slavery was in vogue by most nations. It was wrong. Women were not given the right to vote. It was wrong. If we had as many women in the Congress today as we have men, I will guarantee you we'd have a hell of a lot less problems than what we're having today. Woo-hoo! And I'm telling you, this next election, we may see the greatest number of young women going into Congress that we've ever seen. And I expect to see a big, big difference. I think women involved in leadership positions is right, not wrong. I think treating the Environmental Protection Agency like a joke is wrong. Doing something is right. Doing nothing is wrong. Join me. Let's change the world. Let's make it as livable as possible, as quickly as possible. Let's do something, and let's start it right now. Thank you very much.